Hello, my name is Tim Falkiner. I was the commercial legal officer with a government agency which regulated a casino. For many years I have been involved with a charity which educates to prevent problem gambling. Over the last few years I have been concentrating on gaming machines, the pokies. Have you been having problems with the pokies? Or have any of your friends or relatives been having problems with them? Today we're going to look at the pokies and ask some questions. How do they work? Are they fair? And could their design be responsible for any problems they may be causing you or your loved ones? Let's first consider the concept of fairness as it applies to games. The best way to do this is to examine cheating methods and work out what it is about cheating methods that gives them their character. The first game we will look at is a carnival game called Milk Bottles. In this game, the stall holder has 5 wooden skittles in the shape of the old-fashioned milk bottles, bottles with wide tops. There are 3 skittles in a row on the bottom line with 2 balanced on top. If you throw a ball and knock down all the skittles, you win a prize. This is one of the oldest and most reliable carnival gaffs or cheats, though the game can be run honestly. In its gaffed form, 2 of the skittles are heavier than the others, so when you throw the ball, the lighter skittles fall, but the heavier ones, which the stall holder puts on the bottom row, are much harder to knock over. Sometimes one of the heavier skittles will fall, but it is hard to knock both of them over. The heavier skittles look the same, and the store holder keeps moving them around to stop the players getting wise. Note that the gaff, the cheating mechanism, relies on concealment. The skittles all look the same, and it also relies on asymmetry. They are not the same. 2 are heavier than the others. Dice have always been of interest to the cheat. There are basically 2 ways to gaff dice. One way is to gaff them so they tend to favour certain sides. This can be done by altering the shape or loading them. The other way to gaff dice is by putting the wrong spots on them. The cheat relies on the fact that the player cannot see both sides of the dice at once. In both cases, the dice are asymmetric, unbalanced, and the asymmetry is concealed. Here we have a crooked blackjack deck. Some of the 10-count cards, 10s, jacks, queens and kings, have been taken out and replaced with 5s, which advantages the dealer. Note that the deck becomes asymmetric and that the asymmetry is concealed. The best cheating games are random. Randomness gives a natural feel to the games. The cheating lies in the deception that the odds appear to the player to be better than they really are. Busting occurs where a crooked casino uses crooked gaming equipment such as a magnetic roulette wheel or heavily loaded dice to quickly strip a player of his ready money. Just because the player is not busted does not mean that the game is honest. Gently loaded dice will grind away the player's bankroll rather than bust the player, but it is still cheating because the player is deceived as to his chances of winning. Cheating games which grind the player can be more dangerous because the player, instead of losing his ready cash in one hit, can continue playing for hours, months and years until he winds up in the gutter with nothing. We have discussed mechanised cheating as involving concealed asymmetry. If we look at the terminology of cheating, we find this confirmed. Words that connote honesty involve the concepts of transparency and symmetry. Words that describe dishonest practices involve concealment and asymmetry. Let's look at a very simple game. We have 2 decks of cards. You have to draw matching cards, 1 from each deck, either 2 black cards or 2 red cards. The chances are 50-50. For example, if you draw a black card from the first deck, your chances of getting a black card from the second deck are 1 in 2. How can we rig this game? Well, it's very easy. We could take all the black cards from one deck and all the red cards from the other and switch them. So one deck has all the black cards and the other has all red. That way the player would never win. However, such a cheat would be too obvious. It would bust the player so hard the player would never come back. It makes far more sense to simply switch some of the cards. So one deck has more blacks and the other has more reds. This is more likely to escape the player's notice, and by reducing the odds from 1 in 2 to, say, 1 in 3, the player may keep playing, attributing his lack of success to a run of bad luck. Let us say we have a very simple 2-reel gaming machine, set up like the 2 decks of cards. This machine has 2 reels with equal numbers of aces and kings. The 2 reels spin independently. You can see that this operates in the same way as the 2 decks of cards. If the first reel stops on the ace, the second reel will either stop on an ace, and you will get a match, or it will stop on a king, and you will get a miss. So how can we gaff this machine to limit matching symbols? Well, we can just do the same as we did with the cards. We can put all the aces on reel 1 and all the kings on reel 2, but the player would not play this machine for long, and anyway it would be too noticeable. What we do is we load up the first reel with almost all the aces and the second reel with almost all the kings. The first reel is now starved of kings and the second reel is now starved of aces. Like the gaffed deck of cards, the player will still get a match, just less often. We have seen how, by using an imbalanced distribution of cards or symbols, how wins can be avoided. But there is another thing we can do with unbalanced symbol distribution. Using unbalanced symbol distribution, we can repeatedly make it appear that the player almost won. This is known as near miss. Here we have our 2-reel gaming machine and we are going to add another reel with queens to it. The question is, how do we distribute those queens across the 3 reels? The first thing we do is we take all queens but 1 off the 3rd reel. So reel 3 is now starved of queens. Remember, we have kings starved on reel 1 and aces starved on reel 2. So on this machine we'll starve queens on reel 3. We also spread the queens across the other 2 reels evenly, or reasonably evenly, because there is little advantage in starving queens on more than 1 reel, and by distributing queens as evenly as possible over the other reels, the player will quite often get 2 queens on those reels, convincing him that he just missed a prize. Now we have the queens clustered on reels 1 and 2. The kings are clustered on reels 2 and 3, and the aces clustered on reels 1 and 3. So we starve each symbol once on a reel to limit wins, and we load up the other reels with the symbol to increase near misses. You can see how this resembles the crooked milk bottle game. The starved reels like the heavy milk bottles, limit wins, whereas the loaded reels, like the light milk bottles, make the game look easy to win. It is this combination, the near misses, coupled with the limitation of wins caused by the concealed asymmetry, that makes the game so dangerous. With the kings, there are 3 chances of getting a king on reel 2, 2 chances of getting a king on reel 3, but only 1 chance on reel 1. As we have pointed out, with the queens, there are 3 chances of getting a queen on reel 1, 2 chances of getting a queen on reel 2, but only 1 chance of getting a queen on reel 3. Similarly, with the aces, you are likely to get aces on reels 1 and 3, but miss out on reel 2. Let's see how all this works on a modern gaming machine. This is the table for the Cat God machine. The Cat God machine has 10 symbols as shown in the left-hand column, and the symbols are distributed over the 5 reels as shown on the table. For example, in the case of the Queen, there are 18 queens spread across the reels 1 to 5, 6 on reel 1, 5 on reel 2, 1 on reel 3, 4 on reel 4, and 2 on reel 5, totaling 18 queen symbols in all. Before proceeding, it is worth just looking again at the scoring system for gaming machines. You have to get matching symbols leading from left to right. Thus, king, 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 king gives you 5 kings, but king, king, 9, king, king is only 2 kings. The 9 on the left-hand side stops any of the following kings from counting. Normally, you need 3 symbols to get a payout. Thus, and this is important, if you miss on reels 1, 2 or 3, you do not get a payout. In the case of the Cat God machine, reading from left to right, 9 pays on 2 reels or more, and the other symbols pay on 3 reels or more. You will already have noticed that the symbol distribution across the reels is not symmetrical, and if you look closely, you will see that each of the symbols 9, 10, Jack, Queen and King is starved on one of the first 3 reels. 9 and 10 are starved on reel 1. Jack and King are starved on reel 2. And Queen is starved on reel 3. Whilst each symbol is starved on one reel, the adjacent reels are loaded or puffed up with the symbol. The starving pattern is dithered, that is to say, the starving is spread across the first 3 reels to break up the pattern. Switching involves switching the reels around. Switching the reels will further conceal the existence of starved reels. Just to recap on some terms, starving involves severely limiting the number of symbols on a reel. Loading is the opposite of starving, putting large numbers of symbols on reels that are covered by a starved reel. Dithering is mixing up the pattern, fuzzing it, making it less obvious. The players do not spot what is going on for a number of reasons, which we will now consider. The players don't expect the starved reels and do not look for them. The players, consciously or unconsciously, visualize the reels as being regular, as all being the same, like decks of cards or poker dice. Different symbols are starved on different reels, which breaks up the pattern. Also, the starved reels do not always miss. They just hit less often, like loaded dice or the heavy milk bottles. The player's attention is continually being diverted from one symbol to another with each spin, On one spin, a player will just miss kings, on another aces, on another tens. Also, the reels can be switched in between spins. Not only that, but outwardly identical machines can have different reel combinations. Let us just look again at how starving and loading reels affects the number of potential combinations. In this slide we have 4 kings distributed across 4 reels. In the case at the top, the kings are distributed asymmetrically, 1 on the first reel and 3 on the second reel. We can see that there are 3 possible combinations. The king on the first reel can match with any of the 3 kings on the second reel, or we can simply say 1 times 3. Below, we see the same 4 kings distributed evenly across 2 reels, and we can also see that either of the kings on reel 1 can line up with either of the kings on reel 2. As you can see, there are 4 possible combinations, or we can express it as 2 times 2 equals 4. Let us go back to the cat god machine and consider the symbol 9 on the first 3 reels. On reel 1 there is 1 9. There are 4 9s on reel 2 and 7 on reel 3. Now 1 times 4 times 7 gives 28 combinations. That is, there are 28 ways of winning. What happens though if these 3 reels were balanced? We can do that by taking 3 symbols off reel 3 and placing them on reel 1. Now the reels are balanced. We have 4 symbols on each reel. That gives us 4 times 4, 16, times 4, 64 possible combinations. 64 ways of winning compared to the 28 ways of winning we had when the symbols were asymmetric. At this point we come back to the cat god machine table and look at the last 2 columns. The second last column shows the number of possible combinations of each symbol as the machine has been designed with unbalanced reels. The last column shows the number of possible combinations, the ways of winning, if the symbols had been distributed equally amongst the reels. In the case of the jack symbol, there are 6 by 1 by 5 by 4 by 4 ways. That is 480 ways of winning. But if the machine had balanced reels, the machine could pay out 4 by 4 by 4 by 4 by 4. That is 1024 ways. That is more than double the chance of winning. You can see that the unbalanced design does not only affect the smaller prizes, it also affects the larger prizes. In the case of pyramids, with a balanced design, the player could expect to win over 2.5 times as often. If we look closely at the table, we can also see there is greater imbalance on the left-hand side, where it will have more effect as the winning combinations are read left to right. The greater asymmetry can be demonstrated by adding up the differences between the symbols on the adjacent reels. You can see the differences are largest on the left. Comparing the actual and perceived combinations, a player who consciously or unconsciously believes the reels are balanced might expect to get back about $200 for every $100 put in. The higher imbalance on the left-hand columns would exacerbate the difference between the actual combinations and the perceived combinations. There is a test for unbalanced reels. You play the machine at a particular setting, that is, say, 1 credit 1 line, and count the occurrence of a particular symbol on reel 1, reel 2 and reel 3 over a number of spins, say 30 spins. Then another 30 spins and another, and so on. If one comes up with a table like this, it is clear the reels are unbalanced. In this case, 3 is obviously starved and reel 2 is loaded. Note that this test could be defeated by reel switching. One matter which should be mentioned is the belief held by many psychologists that gaming machine problem gamblers suffer from some brain disorder. In fact, there is nothing wrong with most of the gaming machine problem gamblers. The first person to realise this was Roger Horbay, the Canadian treatment provider and educator, who did not believe so many of his clients could be suffering from some brain dysfunction, and investigated the way the machines worked. We have been considering how gaming machines can be gaffed by the unbalanced distribution of symbols between reels, but there are in fact two fundamental ways of gaffing the machines. Consider for a moment how dice can be gaffed. On the one hand, they can be misspotted. On the other hand, they can be weighted, shaved, and so on. In the latter case, so that even though they have the right spots on them, they are more likely to land one way than another. Just to recap, misspotted dice are of uniform consistency and they are square. They roll all right, but they have the wrong spots on them. Loaded dice have the right spots, but they have a weight inside them, which means that they do not roll properly, and some numbers come up more often and some less often. As we have been discussing, if you want a symbol to miss on a particular reel, you can make it miss by starving it on that reel. But another way you can make a symbol miss is not to starve it on the reel, but to weight the reel so the symbol tends not to stop on the pay line. This gaff is not used in Australia, though it is widely used in other countries. A simple way to prevent a symbol stopping on the pay line was to insert a bug, a washer held by a small bolt, on the stopping notch of the reel, so the reel simply jumped that stopping position. A more sophisticated version of this was the stop star. This was a cam fitted to the reel spindle which only allowed the reel to stop at every second symbol. The symbols opposite the points on the stop star could only stop above or below the pay line. Today, the old mechanical devices which controlled slot machines have been replaced by computers. Modern-day computers do not use stop stars, but they do have a device known as virtual reel mapping, where the reel is controlled by computer, and the computer, like loaded dice, assigns different weightings to different symbols. The advantage of weighting the symbols is that the symbol can be programmed to stop just above or just below the pay line, which is very tantalising for the player. This would not, however, work with Australian multi-line machines, as symbols can still pay though they are above or below the centre pay line. To finish this up, let's just recap on how the Australian machines work. Spin the reels. Well, we just missed out on 3 kings. Or did we? The probability is that the third reel was starved of kings. Spin the reels again. Oh, we just missed out on 3 aces. Or did we? The probability is that the second reel was starved of aces. And spin the reels again. We almost got 3 queens. Or did we? The probability again was that the first reel, the reel we missed on, was starved of queens. If you have been losing control when you play gaming machines, I hope this information is of assistance. If you have been told you suffer some psychological disorder because the machines looked to you as though they should be paying out, your assessment of the machines, based on the perfectly natural assumption that the reels were balanced, was correct. You, like generations of players before you, were tricked by one or more cheating devices built into the machines. If you have found this DVD of assistance in helping to address a gambling problem which you or one of your loved ones had, please drop me a line to my email address as shown. With kind regards and wishing you all the best for the future, Tim Falkiner.